Good afternoon and welcome to this press conference, which follows the plenary adoption of the legislation, the report on the energy performance of buildings. So with us, the Rapporteur, Ciarán CUFFE, to whom I immediately leave the floor. Thank you.
It's good to be with you this afternoon, and I think we have sound. Look, I'm very pleased with the deal. It is a Greens European Free Alliance win, particularly on the social safeguards, but also there are reassurances on finance and flexibility is offered to member states. I certainly believe that this deal is both fair and realistic. It is flexible, and I certainly believe it is the right plan for Europe. It's fair and realistic because it will lower energy bills, it will tackle the root causes of energy poverty, and it will create jobs. It will create local jobs, and also it will provide funding for renovations. It's flexible because each member state develops a renovation plan, and that renovation plan is based on improving the lower performing buildings in that member state. And we calibrate the 15% that corresponds to a G energy rating from the worst performing 15% of buildings in that country. We also allow exemptions for heritage buildings and also up to a 22% derogation if the member state so wishes. But it's the right plan for Europe as well. It ensures we reach our climate targets, and it will be a big cut to our gas dependence, which has been, up until recently, on Putin in Russia. But we don't want to flip from one dictator to another. We want to ensure that Europe attains energy security and that we move away from fossil fuels. Buildings are important. Buildings consume 40% of Europe's energy, and they're responsible for 36% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So over 1/3 of the emissions come from buildings. And if we tackle this, we're well on our way to our climate targets. This winter, householders all around Europe, including ourselves, have opened up a bill and seen sky-high prices. If we renovate our buildings, it will reduce our energy bills going forward. And this is hugely important. And we also want to take people out of energy poverty. Even before this winter, before the pandemic, we know that tens of millions of Europeans were suffering from energy poverty in cold, drafty homes in the winter, in overheated homes in the summer. This proposal will tackle this. It will deliver more comfortable living spaces in our towns, in our cities. It will improve air quality because the move away from burning coal, oil and gas will improve urban air quality. And we saw in the pandemic the relationship between COVID mortality and poor urban air quality. So we're tackling that as well. But I also think a lot of Europe needs an economic boost at the moment. We're seeing flatlining growth in several countries, and the improvement, the renovation of buildings will boost jobs. And it will boost not only highly skilled construction professionals, but it will also boost unskilled labour at a local level. It's a good story for SMEs, it's a good story for householders, it's a good story for tenants. So I'm certainly pleased with what we've achieved in the deal. I'm happy with the deal, and I'm pleased that all the major groups signed up to it. And the vast bulk of the amendments went the right way today. So I'm pleased with that. There were attempts from some parties, particularly on the far right, to remove the ambition from the file, and thankfully that didn't happen. And in conclusion, it is a fair deal. It's a flexible deal. And by giving legislative certainty, I know that the money will flow. That's the message I have heard over the last year from the European Investment Bank, from the European Central Bank. Show us the certainty, we'll make the money available. That money is already flowing in terms of low-interest loans to member states and to local authorities, but this will increase over the coming years, and it needs to, because this is a project It's not a 3-year or a 5-year project. It's a project that takes us to 2050 to achieve A-rated buildings all around Europe, and in doing so, safeguard the planet as well as safeguard people in their homes. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. We now have some time for questions. Priority to the room. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Miroslav Lenkov. I'm from Bulgaria, Builder newspaper. So my question is where the funding will come from? Yeah.
Well, a lot of the money is already there in the Recovery and Resilience Facility. I know that the post-COVID funds provide 15 billion to Italy. I think several billion to Bulgaria the last time I looked. But it's not just about the Recovery and Resilience funding. The InvestEU funds, structural funds, the Social Climate Fund, all of these facilities will be available to assist with building renovations. And on top of that, the European Investment Bank is rebranding itself as a climate bank, and that means that they are certainly willing and able to provide low-interest funding. I know in my home city of Dublin, the European Investment Bank has provided, I think, 150 to 200 million euro in the last few years, and I think this will increase around Europe. The next step, though, is to put in place the national building renovation plans. So once we get this file through trialogue, it is then a requirement that each member state comes up with a national building renovation plan. And within that plan, they can identify the funding, they can decide where they're going to focus on or concentrate on.
And can you tell us more about this scheme, Pay As You Save? What is about? What is the meaning of this?
The Pay As You Save is a way of allowing people who may not have the funding themselves to upgrade their home. This can be done through energy service companies, ESCOs, who can come in and say to a householder, we will renovate your home, we will put in the insulation and the solar panels, your bills will come down, we will take a profit off of this, but we will give you certainty and savings going forward. I don't know if one of my colleagues wants to add to that, Tomas or Heike. Pay as you save. Tomas, are we okay with that? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Hi, Marek Majewski from German press agency DPA. Could you elaborate a little bit more about possible exemptions and what will happen if homeowners doesn't go with the rules? Thank you.
There are very generous exemptions within the file. I mentioned the headline possibility of up to 22% of the worst performing building stock in a member state being exempt from the requirements. But there are exemptions for small buildings under 50 square meters. There are exemptions for religious buildings, for heritage buildings, and for buildings that are only occupied on a temporary basis, such as holiday homes. And I think one of the reasons for these exemptions is to really get to the heart of the problem. And I've seen in some member states, I've heard stories of people renovating their holiday homes with grants from central government. So I think we need to be quite forensic with where we focus our efforts. But the 22%, the heritage buildings, the religious buildings, the small buildings, and the temporarily occupied buildings have the possibility of exemptions under the proposal.
And sanctions if you don't comply with the rules?
There are no penalties within the legislation. Ultimately, it will be up to the member state to decide on this. And at a European level, the European Court of Justice can intervene. But within the file, we haven't put in a series of penalties.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello, Pauline Froissart from AFP News Agency. I had a question about the measures to authorize hybrid boilers that has been criticized by NGOs. Is it still in the text, or Is it maintained?
My understanding is it is still in the text. And look, I'm not enthusiastic about hybrid boilers, but this was a necessary part of the lawmaking process here within the European Parliament. It was seen as a red line issue by the European People's Party. Certainly, my view is that we need to accelerate climate action. We need to phase out fossil fuel use as soon as possible, but it became clear that we would not get the majority we needed without allowing for the possibility of hybrid boilers. I mean, to be practical, I think hybrid boilers will have a limited appeal to householders. This winter, we've seen extraordinary price spikes in gas. I think one of the pluses in moving to renewables is that there is less price volatility as the years go forward. And it looks as though gas prices, they're still way above the historical averages. So I think people will take the opportunity as renewables come on stream to move towards electricity for heating. And certainly I know within my home country of Ireland, 35–40% of the electricity is from renewables. We aim to get that to 80% by the time the first requirement for residential homes kicks in 2030. So we're seeing the greening of electricity across Europe, and that will absolutely assist in favouring, I think, electricity over these hybrid boilers.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, please.
Tommy Meskel, RT News. In a country like Ireland, where you have a housing crisis and you also have rising construction costs, given that background, is it really the right time to be implementing standards like these?
I think in the last few years, we've had challenges in Ireland with supply chain difficulties around Europe due to COVID, but also over the last 12 months due to Russia's war in Ukraine. Most of this file will only kick in by the end of the decade. And I think by that time, the roadmap for decarbonisation will bring more players into the renovation sector, and it will offer young people a safe, stable and decent jobs in that sector. In Ireland, we've had boom and bust in the construction cycle. This is about counter-cyclical action in providing a clear trajectory towards the year 2050. And yes, we do have high construction prices at the moment in Ireland and elsewhere in Europe. I think that will stabilise in the coming years. In Ireland, we're lucky to have full employment at the moment. We haven't had that for a prolonged period, but there are domestic issues that we absolutely have to tackle over housing supply. But I think we're setting a goal and we're setting milestones along the journey to that goal. And that in itself will help tackle the price issue, the supplies issue, and the construction skills issue as well.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, Alfredo Spalla from Quotidiano Energia. In Italy, Italy says it is not satisfied with the text just approved, and claims to want to modify at trilogue level. Are you afraid of something could change, and how do you judge the Italy position?
Well, I think Italy has been interesting insofar as the file was weaponized by Salvini and by Meloni. They suggested that that Brussels was going to evict people from their homes, and they essentially put out a lot of mistruths about the file. The reality is, in Italy, as in other countries in Europe, we need to take action. We have people, as we speak, living in energy poverty as winter comes to an end in Italy, and in summer, with warmer seasons due to climate change, we will have people living in unbearable heat. So we have to take action. We already have the eco bonus scheme in Italy, And what I spoke about earlier, we need very directed measures at those who really need it. And I would hope that the Italian government would take action on this. Politically, we still have to go through trialogues, and the position of Council differs from the position of the Commission, and that differs from the Parliament position. So we will try and find a landing zone. I think the Parliament has been ambitious, but obviously the ship of ambition can founder on the rocks of interinstitutional dialogue, but I hope that we can keep our ambition afloat and produce a strong law at the end of the day.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, a follow-up to this last question, Gabriele Rosana, El Messaggero, Italy. We saw that EPP and Renew were split. Some member states are increasingly critical with several dossiers, not only yours, of the 54-55. Do you see the risk for your file to end up blocked by governments, like has just happened with the car engine ban?
Yeah, I think there are risks in Europe at the moment, but I think those risks are due to Putin's action in Ukraine, they're due to climate breakdown, and I think the sooner governments realise that we need to take action soon, rather than kick the can down the road, the easier it will be to get these Fit for 55 files through. I'm concerned that one member state has been blocking the ice ban legislation. I'm concerned at what I hear from some governments in some member states, but I think there is a majority to move these files forward, to complete the package of Fit for 55 laws well before the end of this mandate. Because what we know from science, what we know from climate, is that we have to take action. And that even if we do deliver all the Fit for 55 files, we still are challenged in meeting our commitments as a union under the Paris Agreement. So now is a time to accelerate rather than to diminish our ambition or to diminish our actions. And I think more particularly in the light of Putin's aggression in Ukraine, the sooner we move away from our dependency on fossil fuels, the better it is for peace in Europe, the better it is for energy security.
Thank you. Any other question? I do not see questions online either. So the file is going to move, as it was said, to the trilogues. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping to move quickly on this if we can. We would like to conclude under the Swedish presidency, in other words, by the end of June, and I'm hoping that that can be achieved. I spoke briefly with Commission officials at lunchtime today, and there is a shared ambition to move this file forward soon.
Then thank you very much, and see you again here soon. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.